Matagal nang naniniwala si Gabriel Villanueva na ang asawa niyang si Isabel Reyes ay tuluyan ng lumayo sa mundong aviation matapos silang ikasal. Hindi niya alam na si Isabel ay nanatiling executive chair ng Aurelia Charter Aviation at patuloy na nagbabantay sa compliance system na siya mismo ang tumulong bumuo. Nang makatanggap si Isabel ng alert tungkol sa isang kakaibang corporate charter booking mula Clark, nagpa siya siyang sumama sa isang undercover service audit bilang ordinaryong check-in staff. Ngunit ang dalawang pasaherong humarap sa kanyang counter ay ang sarili niyang asawa at si Serena Castillo, ang babaeng matagal na niyang pinaghihinalaan. Ang flight na hindi umalis. 9:30 ng gabi, nang isuot ni Isabel Reyes ang navy blue jacket ng Aurelia Charter Aviation at itali ang simpleng scarf sa leeg, sa salamin ng maliit na staff room sa Clark Private Terminal. Hindi siya mukhang executive chair ng isang aviation company na may kontrata sa ilan sa pinakamalalaking negosyo sa Pilipinas. Mukha siyang senior passenger service agent na naghahanda para sa graveyard shift. Iyon mismo ang gusto niya. Hindi niya unang plano na magtago. 3 linggo nang may nakatakdang internal service audit sa terminal. At personal niyang gustong makita kung sinusunod pa rin ng ground team ang bagong manifest verification procedure pagkatapos ng 2 minor documentation errors noong nakaraang quarter. Karaniwan, sapat nang magpadala siya ng quality auditor. Ngunit nang makarating sa kanya kaninang hapon ang automated alert tungkol sa isang last-minute Villanueva Pacific Holdings charter, nagbago ang isip niya. Ang flight request ay na-file bilang urgent investor meeting. Departure Clark, Destination Singapore. Aircraft isang 8-seat business jet under Aurelia Management. Corporate account holder Villanueva Pacific Holdings. Primary passenger Gabriel Villanueva. Ang kakaiba ay ang timing. Kinabukasan ng 10:00 ng umaga ang emergency board meeting ng kumpanya ng asawa niya sa Makati. Walang sinabi si Gabriel na aalis siya ng bansa. Mas kakaiba pa. Isang passenger name ang idinagdag sa manifest 2 oras lamang bago departure. Serena Castillo. Ma'am Isabel, sure po kayo dito? Tanong ni Mia. Ang terminal supervisor na iisa lamang sa 3 taong nakakaalam ng tunay niyang identity ng gabing iyon. We can handle the audit without you. Isinara ni Isabel ang locker. That was the original plan. And now? Now I want to see whether the system works when the passenger is someone who expects it to bend. Hindi sinabi ni Mia ang pangalan ni Gabriel. Hindi kailangan. Kilala ng senior staff ang Villanueva account. Malaki iyon. Consistent at historically low risk. Hindi rin kailanman humingi si Isabel ng special treatment para sa asawa. Sa katunayan, iyon ang isa sa mga unang rules niya nang pumasok ang Villanueva Holdings bilang client corporate account rules applied exactly the same way as every other company. If something is wrong, sabi ni Mia, compliance handles it. Correct. Not you personally. Correct? Tumingin si Isabel sa kanya. And if I forget that tonight, remind me. Iyon ang pinakaimportanteng bahagi. Hindi siya pumunta roon para pigilan si Gabriel makasama si Serena. Kung affair lamang ang problema, wala siyang karapatang gamitin ng isang aircraft operation bilang marital weapon. Maaari siyang umiyak pagkatapos. Maaari niyang iwan ng asawa. Maaari niyang harapin ng babae. Ngunit hindi maaaring maging dahilan ang selos para hindi mag-release ng flight. Ang kailangan niyang malaman ay kung may operational reason talaga. Bandang 10:15. Dumating ang black SUV sa covered entrance ng terminal. Nakita iyon ni Isabel sa monitor bago pa bumukas ang pinto. Una niyang nakita si Serena. Naka-cream tailored trousers, silk blouse, at long camel coat na tila mas bagay sa business lounge kaysa tropical evening. May isang leather carry-on at malaking hard-shell suitcase ang driver sa likod niya. Sumunod si Gabriel. Naka-dark jacket at open-collar white shirt. Hawak ang black lock document case na matagal nang ginagamit niya para sa confidential board materials. Dalawa rin ang malalaking suitcase niya. Para sa isang urgent investor meeting na ayon sa filing ay less than 48 hours. Masyadong marami ang luggage. Hindi iyon proof ng kahit ano. Ngunit nakita ni Isabel ang sarili niyang kamay na bahagyang humigpit sa counter. Sa 6 na taon nilang kasal, alam niya kung paano mag-pack si Gabriel para sa business trip. Isang carry-on. Isang garment bag kung formal. Hindi 2 malalaking maleta. Good evening. Sis? Ma'am? Bati niya nang lumapit sila. Bahagya niyang ibinaba ang mukha sa monitor. Hindi siya lubusang nagmask. Rectangular eyeglasses. Tied back hair at terminal lighting lamang ang sapat para hindi siya agad mapansin ng lalaking ilang linggo nang halos hindi tumitingin sa kanya ng matagal. Gabriel Villanueva. Serena Castillo. Sabi ni Serena. Inilapag ang passports sa counter. We're on the 11 o'clock charter. We need to depart early if possible. I'll check your documents. Ma'am. Kinuha ni Isabel ang passports. Hindi nanginginig ang kamay niya. Sa screen, lumabas ang booking. Gabriel Villanueva, authorized traveler. Serena Castillo added 1941. Corporate authorization document, issued 1405. Passenger manifest amendment awaiting account revalidation. Doon siya tumigil. Karaniwan, kung ang corporate charter authorization ay nakatali sa named passenger group, anumang material manifest change ay kailangang ma-revalidate ng designated corporate approver. Para sa Villanueva account, ang authorized approvers ay CFO office at corporate secretary. Wala pang electronic confirmation. Ma'am Serena, sabi niya, your name was added after the original travel authorization. We're still waiting for validation from the corporate account. Napabuntong hininga si Serena. That was already handled. The system hasn't received confirmation yet. Gabriel approved it. Hindi tumingala si Isabel agad. Sir Gabriel is a passenger and account executive. But this booking requires corporate travel authorization according to the client profile. I am the CEO. Sabi ni Gabriel. Unang beses nagsalita. Pamilyar ang boses. Kalmado. Ngunit may layer ng impatience. I authorized the trip. Yes. Sir. But the client's own account controls require secondary authorization for manifest amendments on executive charter bookings. Umayo si Gabriel. Since when? Since your company asked for it after last year's internal travel review. Tumingin si Serena kay Gabriel na parang inaasahan nitong tatapusin niya ang usapan sa isang pangungusap. Can't you call someone? Tanong niya. I already did. Sagot niya. They know we're traveling. Who confirmed the passenger change? Tanong ni Isabel. Napatingin sa kanya si Gabriel. Hindi pa rin recognition ang nasa mukha. Inis lamang sa isang empleyadong masyadong maraming tanong. My office. Name? Sir. Tahimik siya saglit. My executive assistant. The designated approval must come from the CFO office or corporate secretary. Napailing si Serena. This is ridiculous. We have a meeting first thing tomorrow. The aircraft is already here. Yes? Ma'am. Then issue the boarding documents. I can complete check-in pending verification. But dispatch cannot release the aircraft until account authorization matches the manifest. Natawa si Serena ng maikli. Do you know who you're talking to? Doon muntik ngumiti si Isabel. Ilang beses na niyang narinig ang linyang iyon sa buong aviation career niya. Politicians, CEOs, celebrities, heirs. Kapag nahaharap sa isang procedure na hindi agad yumuyuko, laging may isang taong nagtatanong kung kilala ba sila ng staff. Yes? Ma'am? Sabi niya. I have your passport? Hindi natuwa si Serena. Get your supervisor. Bago pa makasagot si Isabel, sumingit si Gabriel. Serena? Enough? Pagkatapos ay yumuko siya ng bahagya sa counter. Miss, we have an urgent investor meeting. My company uses Aurelia regularly. There shouldn't be a problem. I understand. Sir, then solve it. Ang pamilyar na paraan niya ng pagsabi noon ang mas masakit kaysa sa inaasahan ni Isabel. Hindi sumigaw si Gabriel. Hindi kailangang sumigaw. Sanay siyang may mga taong gumagawa ng paraan dahil sinabi niyang urgent. Ilang taon na ang nakalipas. Iyon mismo ang ugaling nagustuhan niya rito, decisive. Mabilis. Hindi madaling mataranta. Ngayon, iba ang nakita niya. Isang lalaking naniwalang ang authority niya ay sapat ng sagot sa tanong kung sino ang may approval. I'm trying to... Sabi ni Isabel. May I also confirm the declared purpose of travel investor meeting and expected return? Huminto si Gabriel. 2 days. Tumingin si Isabel sa 4 na malalaking maleta. Hindi siya nagkomento. Any corporate documents requiring special handling? No. Doon bumaba ang mata niya sa lock case na hawak ni Gabriel. Hindi bawal ang confidential papers. Hindi rin kailangan ng airline malaman ng content. Ngunit ang corporate travel file ay may classification kung may company securities. Signed originals o controlled documents na dinadala. Ang declared field ay blank. Dumating ang baggage agent at nagsimulang timbangin ang maleta. Habang abala si Serena sa reklamo tungkol sa weight allowance. Mabilis na nag-message si Isabel sa secure staff terminal kay Mia. Check authorization status only. Do not override. Send to compliance if still unmatched at T30. Pagkatapos ay tinignan niya ang booking notes. May isa pang bagay na hindi niya nakita kanina. Ang Singapore destination ay hindi ang final itinerary. May tentative onward handling request para sa Kuala Lumpur kinabukasan ng gabi. Ngunit walang corresponding corporate travel memo. Hindi iyon illegal. Maaari nilang baguhin ang itinerary later. Pero para sa isang urgent investor meeting bago ang emergency board session, lalong hindi tugma ang picture. Serena leaned closer. We need to be airborne before midnight. Scheduled departure is 11. Ma'am, I know. I'm saying no delays. We're waiting on account verification. Why does that matter so much? Because the charter is billed to a corporate account and the CEO is standing right here. Isabel finally looked directly at her. That doesn't remove the company's approval controls. Gabriel stared at the woman behind the counter a little longer. Something shifted in his expression. Isabel saw the moment familiarity entered his mind. Not certainty yet. The eyes. Perhaps. Or the way she said approval controls. A phrase he had heard at home whenever he complained that Aurelia processes were too rigid. What's your name? Tanong niya. Nasa uniform badge ang pangalan na ginagamit sa audit ay Reyes. Hindi fake. Tunay niyang surname. Reyes? Sir. Naging tahimik siya. Serena turned toward him. What? Hindi agad sumagot si Gabriel. Pagkatapos ay dahan-dahan niyang sinabi. Take off the glasses. Hindi gumalaw si Isabel. Sir Isabel. Napatingin si Serena sa kanya. Bumaba ang kulay ng mukha nito. Sa loob ng ilang segundo, parang nawala ang terminal sounds radio chatter. Wheels ng baggage cart. Mahina na air conditioning. Inalis ni Isabel ang salamin at inilapag sa tabi ng keyboard. Walang saysay ang pagtatago kapag nakilala na siya. Good evening. Gabriel. Jesus Christ. Umatras siya ng kalahating hakbang. What the hell are you doing here, working? Behind a check-in desk, operational audit, You're spying on me. I came because this booking triggered an irregularity alert. Hindi iyon buong emosyonal na katotohanan. Dumating siya dahil pangalan ni Serena ang nakita niya. Alam niya iyon. Ngunit tunay rin ang irregularity. You dressed like an employee to spy on us. Sabi ni Serena. Bumalik ang tapa ngayong alam na kung sino ang kaharap. I am an employee of this company. You know what I mean? Yes. And we can discuss my judgment later. Gabriel leaned closer. Release the flight. Wala nang polite CEO voice. Husband na ang kausap niya ngayon. At iyon mismo ang problemang kailangang ihiwalay ni Isabel. I can't. You can. No. Compliance can clear the hold when the authorization is correct. Don't play games with me. I'm not. You saw Serena and decided to stop the aircraft. The manifest amendment is not validated. Because of one administrative form. Because your company specifically requires secondary approval for changes to executive charter passenger list. I'm the CEO of that company. And your board approved controls that don't disappear because the CEO is the passenger. Namula ang mukha ni Gabriel. Call your operations head. Already involved. Then tell them to release. No. Si Serena ang unang nawalan ng pasensya. This is revenge. Tumingin si Isabel sa kanya. If you were traveling on a personal charter paid by either of you, with complete passenger documents, I would have no operational basis to stop it. So let us pay personally, sabi ni Serena agad. Napatingin si Gabriel sa kanya. Isabel shook her head. You can request a new booking under a personal account, subject to aircraft availability, crew duty limits, payment verification, and a new flight release. This corporate booking cannot simply be converted at the counter. How long, tanong ni Gabriel. I don't know. We cannot miss this meeting? Then call your corporate secretary and have the authorization corrected. You think I can explain this at 10:30 at night? That is not an aviation problem. Sa puntong iyon, lumapit si Mia kasama ang tablet. Hindi niya tinawag si Isabel na ma'am. Professional ang tono. Miss Reyes? Compliance escalated the file. There's another discrepancy. Napatingin si Gabriel. What discrepancy? Hindi sumagot si Mia sa kanya agad. Iniabot ang tablet kay Isabel. Ang updated compliance flag ay simple. Trip purpose authorization does not cover revised passenger manifest and onward itinerary. Account verification required before operational release. May note rin mula sa Villanueva Corporate Secretary Office. No after-hours amendment authorization received. Please hold pending confirmation. Hindi na kailangan ni Isabel gumawa ng personal judgment. Ang corporate side mismo ang humihingi ng hold. Dispatch status, tanong niya. Pending. Then mark operational release suspended until account verification. Tumango si Mia. Isang pindot sa tablet. Walang dramatic red button. Walang tawag sa control tower. Walang utos na ground the plane. Isang normal na operational status change lamang sa Aurelia system. Ngunit ang epekto ay malinaw, crew could continue pre-flight preparation. Pero walang dispatch release para umalis. What did you just do? Tanong ni Gabriel. Tinignan siya ni Isabel ng diretsyo. Sir Gabriel? Hindi aalis ang aircraft. Suspended ang operational release hanggang ma-verify kung sino talaga ang autorisadong bumiyahe ngayong gabi. Isabel, ngayon, may babala sa boses niya. Reverse it. No. You cannot keep me in this airport. I'm not keeping you here. You're stopping my plane. Not your plane. Nanigas siya. Tinuro ni Isabel ang monitor. Aurelia Managed Aircraft. Corporate Charter Account. Corporate Approval Rules. You are free to leave this terminal whenever you want. And our flight? Not until the documentation is valid. Serena folded her arms. You're enjoying this. Hindi agad sumagot si Isabel. Masakit, dahil may maliit na bahagi sa kanya na gustong makita silang parehong nawalan ng kontrol matapos ang mga buwan ng kasinungalingan. Ngunit iyon mismo ang bahagi na hindi niya maaaring sundin. No, sabi niya. Actually, I hate that I'm standing here. Gabriel looked around the terminal. 2 pilots were visible beyond the glass, still preparing the aircraft. Everything looked ready. The jet was fueled. Bags were tagged. Crew was present. The runway lights outside remained bright. Ang tanging bagay na kulang ay isang operational release na ilang oras kanina ay malamang hindi man lamang niya alam na umiiral. Do you have any idea what's at stake? Tanong niya. Tell me. Hindi sumagot. Doon lalo siyang kinabahan. Gabriel, what is in Singapore? And in Besto? Which one? That is confidential. I'm your wife? And right now you're acting like compliance. Then answer as a corporate client. Serena stepped between the conversation. We don't have time for this. You keep saying that, sabi ni Isabel. Why? Walang sumagot. Tumingin siya sa locked document case. Sa 4 na maleta. Saka sa onward itinerary na hindi kasama sa original authorization. Tomorrow morning is your emergency board meeting. Sabi niya kay Gabriel. Yet you're trying to leave the country tonight for a trip your corporate secretary hasn't fully authorized? You changed the passenger list. You added an onward segment. And you're carrying documents you didn't classify in the travel request. Stop interrogating me. Then stop giving me reasons to ask questions. Hindi na siya nagsalita. At doon nagbago ang takbo ng gabi para kay Isabel. Hanggang ilang minuto kanina, ang pinakamalaking takot niya ay kumpirmahin na niloloko siya ng asawa. Ngayon, nakatayo sa harap niya ang ebidensiyang mas malaki ang tinatakbuhan ni Gabriel kaysa sa marriage nila. Huminga siya ng mabagal at ibinalik ang eyeglasses sa mukha. Compliance will handle the flight from here. Sabi niya, I'm stepping out of the release decision. Natawa si Gabriel ng mapait. After you already stop it? After the system stopped it for reasons you still refuse to explain? Lumapit siya ng kaunti. Ano pang karapatan mo para pigilan akong umalis? Tahimik ang mukha ni Isabel. Hindi kita pinipigilan umalis. Gabriel. Tumingin siya sa aircraft sa labas ng salamin. Saka bumalik sa asawa. Pinipigilan ko lang ang kumpanyang gamitin mo na parang personal mong eroplano. Sa unang pagkakataon ng gabing iyon, walang naisagot si Gabriel. At habang nananatiling nakaparada ang jet sa ilalim ng maliwanag na Clark runway lights, nagsimulang maintindihan ni Isabel na ang flight na hindi umalis ay maaaring pinakamaliit pa lamang sa mga bagay na malapit nang bumagsak. Hindi personal ang clearance. 15 minuto matapos masuspend ang operational release ng aircraft. Parang ibang lugar na ang private terminal. Pareho pa rin ang malamig na ilaw. Parehong tahimik ang carpeted lounge. At sa labas ng salamin ay nakahanda pa rin ang business jet na parabang anumang oras ay maaari itong tumakbo papunta sa runway. Ngunit wala nang normal na departure atmosphere sa loob. Dinala ng ground staff ang mga bagahe ni Gabriel at Serena sa secure holding area habang hinihintay ang compliance instruction. Ang 2 piloto ay nanatili sa crew room dahil wala pa silang dispatch release. Si Mia naman ay lumipat sa operations desk upang makipag-coordinate sa Central Compliance Team sa Manila. Si Isabel ay umalis sa check-in counter at tinanggal ang scarf ng uniform bago pumasok sa maliit na conference lounge sa kabilang dulo ng terminal. Sumunod si Gabriel nang walang paanyaya. You embarrass me in front of my own staff? Bungad niya. Hindi lumingon si Isabel agad. Your staff. You know what I mean. No, Gabriel. I think that's exactly the problem tonight. You keep calling everything yours. Napahinto siya. Sa likod nila. Pumasok si Serena at isinara ang pinto. This is insane. Sabi nito. If this is about me, say it directly. Don't hide behind aviation rules. Doon lumingon si Isabel. If this were only about you, the aircraft would be gone by now. Natahimik si Serena. Inilapag ni Isabel ang temporary ID badge sa mesa at binuksan ang tablet na ibinigay ni Mia. Let's separate the issues because apparently nobody else wants to. First, you and my husband are having an affair. That is personal. Second, Villanueva Holdings booked a corporate charter under a travel authorization that no longer matches the actual passenger manifest. That is governance. Third, the itinerary contains an onward segment not included in the original corporate travel request. That is documentation. Fourth, your corporate secretary has not confirmed the amendment. That is why dispatch suspended release. Tumingin siya kay Gabriel. You can walk out of this terminal right now. You can book a commercial flight if seats are available. You can even request a new private charter under a personal account if another aircraft, crew, payment and operational requirements can be arranged. I am not stopping you from leaving the Philippines. But you know we don't have time for that. Sagot ni Gabriel. Then explain why. It's confidential. Then stop accusing me of revenge when your own secrecy is what triggered the problem. Serena crossed her arms. Convenient? You show up disguised as staff? Catch us together. Then suddenly, every form matters. Isabel did not flinch. Every form mattered before I saw your face. Gabriel walked to the window and stared at the aircraft outside. For several seconds he said nothing. Reverse the hold. Isabel, we'll resolve the paperwork in flight. She almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the sentence summarized everything wrong with his thinking. No. Why? Because we'll fix it later is not a release condition. I can sign whatever is needed. You cannot self-approve a control your own company designed to prevent unilateral executive use. I'm still the CEO. And your CFO office is still a separate control function. Tumalikod siya mula sa bintana. You really enjoy saying that tonight. Masakit ang accusation. Pero hindi na siya nagalit. Actually, no. I'm ashamed that I had to learn my husband was cheating while checking a manifest. Lumambot ng kaunti ang mukha ni Gabriel ngunit sandali lang. Then admit, this is emotional. Of course it is. Tumango si Isabel. I'm not pretending I'm made of steel. That's exactly why I'm stepping out of the release decision. Kinuha niya ang phone at tumawag kay Mia. Transfer final disposition to Central Compliance and Dispatch. No executive override from me. I want written grounds either way. Pinatay niya ang tawag at tumingin kay Gabriel. There. From this point forward, I don't decide whether you fly. Hindi iyon ang sagot na inaasahan ni Gabriel. Mas madali sana kung naging personal ang laban. Mas madaling sabihin sa sarili na pinipigilan siya ng asawang nasaktan. Ngayon, kailangan niyang harapin ang sistemang hiwalay kay Isabel. Makalipas ang ilang minuto, pumasok si Mia kasama ang printed compliance summary. Sir, Ma'am, Central Compliance Requests, Account Revalidation from Villanueva Corporate Secretary or CFO Office. They also need clarification on the onward itinerary and the purpose classification. Because the booking file currently says, investor meeting in Singapore only, tumingin si Gabriel sa papel. If I remove Serena from the manifest, tanong niya iyon nang hindi tumitingin sa babae. Naging matigas ang mukha ni Serena. Sumagot si Mia. The original passenger authorization would still need review because the onward itinerary was added after approval. If we remove the onward leg, we still need confirmation that the Singapore trip remains authorized under the corporate account. Napabuntong hininga si Gabriel. How long depends on your company approvers. It's almost 11. Yes. Sir, our corporate secretary won't answer. The compliance team already sent an escalation request. Tumayo si Serena. This is impossible. We have to be there in the morning. Napatingin si Isabel sa kanya. Morning for what? Serena did not answer. Gabriel's silence was worse. Isabel had spent years around executives who thought urgency itself was confidential information. She knew the pattern when someone kept repeating that time mattered but refused to say why. The deadline was usually tied to leverage. Signature. Market opening. Funding window. Or an internal event they were trying to beat. Your board meets at 10 tomorrow. Sabi ni Isabel. Singapore is the opposite direction from Makati. I know geography. Sagot ni Gabriel. Then what happens if you don't get there tonight? No answer. Gabriel. We lose an opportunity. What opportunity? Financing. Serena turned sharply toward him. You don't have to tell her. That was enough to confirm the scale. Isabel looked from Serena to Gabriel. Financing for what? The company. That tells me nothing. It's a private placement. Approved by the board, tahimik siya. Finance committee, wala pa ring sagot. You're leaving the country hours before an emergency board meeting to negotiate financing that the board doesn't know you're traveling to discuss. They know we have funding pressure. That is not what I ask. Gabriel finally sat down. For the first time that night, he looked less like the CEO trying to overpower a procedure and more like a man who had been awake too many nights. One of our expansion investments is underperforming. Sabi niya. How badly? Badly enough. That's not a number. You're not on my board. Then why are you using an Aurelia corporate charter billed to that board's company? Serena stepped in. Because the investor won't wait. They gave us a narrow window. If Gabriel goes to tomorrow's meeting without a credible financing path, the board will freeze the expansion portfolio and possibly move against him. Isabel looked at her husband. Is that what you're running from? I'm not running. You packed 2 suitcases and skipped the meeting. I plan to join remotely from Singapore. If the deal was signed, before the board reviewed it, he stood again. You don't understand what happens if I walk into that room with nothing. Then explain it, instead of expecting me to accept the word urgent. At that moment, Gabriel's phone rang. He looked at the screen and did not answer. Isabel recognized the name only because she had seen it before at family events. Arturo Villanueva. Gabriel's uncle and current vice chair of the holding company board. The phone stopped. Then rang again. Answer it. Sabi niya. No. Why? Because he'll ask where I am. Good question. Serena looked irritated. This isn't helping. Isabel turned to her. Neither is pretending you're just going to an investor breakfast. The third call came through. Gabriel finally accepted it and stepped a few feet away. But the lounge was too small for privacy. Uncle. His voice changed immediately. Formal. Controlled. Yes? I know tomorrow's meeting is still on. A pause. I'm handling something tonight. Another pause. His face tightened. No. I'm not in Makati. He closed his eyes. Clark? Isabel watched the blood drain slightly from his face. Yes? At the terminal. Longer silent. Who told you? This time even Serena stopped moving. Gabriel looked at Isabel, but she shook her head before he could accuse her. Then he said, "No, I did not ask Isabel to arrange anything." Another pause. "I'll call you back." "What happened?" tanong ni Serena. Hindi sumagot si Gabriel agad. Corporate secretary escalated the charter authorization because compliance contacted them. Isabel nodded. "Normal process. My uncle now knows I'm trying to leave." "Were you planning to tell him silence?" "There's your answer." Gabriel looked at her sharply. "You wanted this." "No. I wanted a correct manifest." "Same result." "Not the same motive." "Does that difference make you feel better?" "Tonight, not particularly." Maya-maya, dumating ang update mula sa Central Compliance Team. The Corporate Secretary's office declined to revalidate the amended charter until the travel purpose and passenger additions were confirmed by the CFO or board-designated approver. The operational hold would therefore remain. Wala nang debate. Isabel read the note once and passed it directly to Gabriel. "This is not my decision." He scanned the document and threw it back onto the table. "The CFO won't authorize because he knows tomorrow's meeting will question the expansion." "Then maybe that's exactly why your company built the control." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then tell me." He looked away. "You think every problem can wait for a committee. It can't. And you think every committee exists to slow you down. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it exists because the CEO is too close to the problem." Serena sat down beside Gabriel and lowered her voice. "We can still take a commercial flight out of Manila." "Too late," sabi niya. "There's an early morning option." "We won't make the meeting." Isabel noticed the wording. "Not the board meeting. The meeting." "What time is the investor meeting?" tanong niya. Serena hesitated. Gabriel answered, 8:30? "And what happens at 8:30 that can't happen by video?" Again silence. "Signature," Isabel asked. "Term sheet?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. She continued. Collateral. Serena looked at him. That reaction was enough. "What are you pledging?" Isabel asked quietly. "Nothing is final." "What are you proposing to pledge? This is Villanueva business." "Then why are you acting like the board cannot see it before you sign?" Gabriel stood up so quickly the chair shifted against the carpet. "Because if they see the full situation before I have a solution, they will kill the expansion, force asset sales, and maybe remove me." There it was. Not investor. Not Singapore. Not even financing. Fear. Isabel said nothing for several seconds. "So you wanted to arrive tomorrow with the answer already signed?" "I wanted to protect the company. And your job. Both can be true." "Yes?" she said. "Finally? Something honest?" Serena looked uncomfortable now. The urgency that had made her confident at the check-in desk suddenly sounded different when spoken plainly. "The financing is legitimate," sabi niya. "The investor is real. The structure gives us time." "At what price?" tanong ni Isabel. "Higher cost of capital." And no answer. Gabriel. He rubbed his face. "Additional security." "What security?" "A logistics asset." Isabel knew enough about Villanueva Holdings to understand that phrase could mean several things, and none of them small. "Which one? The Kalamba? Logistics hub?" She stared at him. Even outside his company, she knew Kalamba was one of the group's strategic operating assets. Not some idle property. You were going to secure emergency financing against Kalamba without the board reviewing the full package first. It's not a transfer. It's collateral. If the financing fails, that distinction gets very interesting. The deal won't fail. That sentence has ruined more companies than any spreadsheet ever did. Gabriel's face hardened again. You are not qualified to judge the financing. Maybe not. But your finance committee is? Did they see it? Silence. Did your CFO parts? Which parts? Serena interrupted. We don't need to conduct a board investigation in an airport lounge. Isabel turned to her. Agreed. Which is why you should both be at the board meeting instead of trying to be airborne before anyone can ask these questions. Makalipas ang 1 oras, wala nang flight. Central Dispatch officially canceled the departure slot after the corporate authorization remained unresolved and crew duty timing made further delay impractical. The aircraft was not seized. Nobody called police. No airport authorities surrounded Gabriel. The jet simply returned to standby status under Aurelia operations. Baggage was released back to the passengers. Gabriel stood beside the entrance as 2 staff members rolled his suitcases toward him. Serena was on her phone trying to find alternative commercial options. But even she sounded less certain now. Isabel had changed back into her own black blazer and removed the audit uniform completely. When she emerged from the staff area, Gabriel looked at her. Happy no? You got what you wanted. I found out my husband was cheating, hiding a financing crisis, and planning to leave the country before his board could question him. Which part of that looks like something I wanted? He looked away. Isabel continued. Quieter now. I also need to own my part. Gabriel turned back. What part? I came here because I saw Serena's name. Yes. There was a valid service audit. Yes. The manifest was irregular. But I chose to put on that uniform personally because I wanted to see what you were doing before I confronted you. So you admit you were spying? Yes. Serena stopped typing on her phone. Isabel did not retreat. I don't regret enforcing the process. But I do regret that our marriage became something where I thought disguise was more useful than asking you the truth. Gabriel's anger softened for half a second. Would you have believed me if I told you I was meeting an investor? Not after tonight? Exactly. That doesn't make the lies smarter. Gabriel. It just tells us how little trust was left. Mia approached one last time with a sealed copy of the compliance record. Ma'am Isabel? Central team completed the incident file. They also attached the corporate travel request submitted earlier today. Isabel almost said she didn't need it. But Mia added, there's a document reference in the purpose field that may explain the escalation. She handed the file over. Isabel read only the first page. Urgent financing presentation, Project Harbor. Under supporting documents was a reference to an additional security package. She flipped to the summary sheet and saw a line that made her stop. Proposed security, Calamba Logistics Hub and related operating receivables. Subject to final lender documentation. Below it was another note. Board Finance Committee circulation pending. Isabel closed the folder. Gabriel saw her expression. That document is incomplete. Then tomorrow you can explain the complete one to your board. Isabel? No, not tonight. She handed the compliance record back to Mia but kept her eyes on Gabriel. The flight was your problem an hour ago. She looked at the locked document case still in his hand. Now, I think it may have saved you from making a much bigger one. Outside, the jet's cabin lights finally turned off. For Gabriel, it looked like a missed escape. For Isabel, it looked increasingly like evidence that there had never been just one thing he was trying to leave behind. Ang deal na dapat itago. 9:30 ng umaga nang pumasok si Gabriel sa pangunahing boardroom ng Villanueva Pacific Holdings sa Makati. Wala na ang dalawang malalaking maleta. Iniwan niya iyon sa bahay matapos bumalik mula Clark madaling araw. Ngunit nasa kamay pa rin niya ang parehong locked document case na nakita ni Isabel sa terminal. Sa mahabang mesa ay naroon ang board vice chair na si Arturo Villanueva. CFO na si Habang dalawang independent directors, legal counsel at head ng internal risk. Si Serena ay nakaupo sa dulong bahagi bilang strategy director. Tahimik at halos walang make-up matapos ang gabing hindi sila nakalipad. Si Isabel ay wala roon noong unang nagsimula ang meeting. Hindi siya board member ng Villanueva Holdings. At malinaw niyang sinabi kay Arturo sa tawag kaninang umaga na hindi niya gustong gamitin ang pagiging asawa ni Gabriel para pumasok sa isang corporate meeting na hindi naman niya sakop. Ngunit dahil Aurelia Charter ang nag-flag ng travel authorization at may corporate aviation governance issue na kailangang linawin, inimbitahan siyang sumali lamang sa relevant portion. Bago siya dumating, nagsimula na ang mas mahirap na usapan. Project Harbor. Sabi ni Arturo. Hawak ang financing summary. You were going to Singapore to discuss a facility secured partly by Calamba? Why did the board receive the full package only this morning? Tahimik si Gabriel sandali. Because the term sheet was still evolving. The collateral list was not evolving. Sagot ng CFO. Calamba has been in the draft for 9 days. Hindi sumigaw si Gabriel. Ang mas delikado sa kanya ay kapag mas tahimik ang boses. 9 days ago, it was one option among several. And 3 days ago, tanong ni Ramon. Still an option. Then why was your strategy team preparing a lender presentation built around that option as though it were the only executable path? Nagkatikinan sina Gabriel at Serena. Sa unang pagkakataon, si Serena ang sumagot. Because it was the only path with a credible closing timeline under the current liquidity window. Binuksan ni Arturo ang isa pang report. Current liquidity window based on whose case, hindi agad sumagot si Serena. Downside case. Only downside tanong ng risk head. The base case still leaves pressure. Pressure is not insolvency. Sagot ni Ramon. Sumandal si Gabriel sa upuan. Nobody said insolvency. Then why were you trying to collateralize one of our strongest logistics assets before the board could review alternatives? Tahimik ang silid. Sa wakas, sinabi ni Gabriel ang bagay na ilang linggo niyang iniiwasan. Because the Kabit expansion is bleeding more cash than originally forecast. The port-adjacent warehousing project is 12 weeks behind schedule. 2 large clients delayed payment. And if we miss the next covenant test without additional liquidity, lenders will demand a remediation plan before quarter end. Doon pumasok si Isabel. Hindi siya dramatic na dumating sa gitna ng sigawan dahil wala namang sumisigaw. Isang legal assistant ang nagbukas ng pinto at pinaupo siya sa side table kasama ang representative ng Aurelia Compliance Team. Naka-charcoal suit siya, buhok, na maayos na nakatali. Walang anumang bakas ng check-in uniform mula kagabi. Nang makita siya ni Gabriel, sandaling tumigas ang ekspresyon nito ngunit hindi siya nagsalita. Si Arturo ang nagbigay ng maikling paliwanag. We're separating the aviation incident from the financing review. Isabel is here only to explain the charter control and any documents generated through Aurelia. Tumango siya. That's all I intend to address. Ipinakita ng compliance officer ang timeline original corporate travel request approved with Gabriel as named executive passenger. Serena added later. Onward itinerary introduced after approval. No revalidation from designated corporate approver. Operational release. Suspended automatically once account mismatch remained unresolved. Did Mrs. Villanueva personally cancel the aircraft? Tanong ng independent director. No. Sagot ng officer. She requested that final disposition be transferred away from herself due to conflict. Central compliance maintained the hold based on the client's own authorization rules. Tahimik si Gabriel. Isang malaking bahagi ng narrative na pwede sana niyang gamitin na pinigilan siya ng selosong asawa ay tuluyang nawala sa official record. Pagkatapos ng aviation portion, dapat sana umalis si Isabel. Ngunit bago siya makatayo, sinabi ni Arturo, "There is one more issue. The financing documents in the travel file reference operating receivables. Aurelia's report shows those materials were carried under a general executive document declaration, not a classified asset package. We need to know whether any shareholder-sensitive material was being transported." Tumingin si Gabriel kay Isabel na parang gusto niyang ipaalala na hindi niya negosyo iyon. Ngunit si Ramon ang sumagot. The lender deck includes cash flow projections and an assignment structure over receivables. It should have gone through finance committee circulation before external negotiation. Si Isabel did not comment. Hindi niya kailangan. Ang silence niya ay hindi judgment. Boundary iyon. Sa halip, tinanong niya ang compliance officer kung may aviation violation sa pagdadala ng paper documents. None by itself. Sagot nito. Our concern was only that the corporate travel purpose and declared documentation profile did not match the amended trip. Tumango si Isabel. Then Aurelia has nothing further? Bago siya lumabas, narinig niya si Arturo na nagsabi, "Actually, Isabel, stay if you're willing. Not as Gabriel's wife. You've built governance systems before. I want an outside view on one question once finance presents the scenarios." Tumingin siya kay Gabriel. Hindi siya humingi ng permiso. If counsel has no objection, I can listen. No vote. No authority. Pumayag ang legal counsel. Sa loob ng sumunod na oras, unti-unting lumitaw kung bakit naging desperate si Gabriel. Ang Cavite Logistics expansion na ipinangako niyang magiging bagong growth engine ng grupo ay mas malaki ang capex overrun kaysa sa alam ng board. Hindi dahil ninakaw ang pera o peke ang invoices, kundi dahil nagbago ang construction costs. May delayed permits at kinailangan nilang mag-upgrade ng cold chain systems matapos mag-sign ng bagong client. Kasabay noon, dalawang malaking receivables ang hindi dumating sa inaasahang buwan. Sa base case ng finance team, may paraan pa freeze second phase expansion. Renegotiate short-term facilities. Collect aggressively. Sell 2 non-core parcels at bagalan ang dividend plan. Mahirap, nakakahiya, at siguradong magmumukhang failure sa market. Sa downside case naman, kung patuloy madelay ang receivables at hindi pumayag ang lenders sa extensions, kailangan nila ng mabilis na financing. Doon pumasok ang Project Harbor. Ang proposed lender ay handang magbigay ng liquidity kapalit ng mataas na interest, operating covenants, at collateral package na may Kalamba Logistics Hub. Why was the lender shown only the downside model? Tanong ng isang independent director. Sumagot si Serena. Because we needed to demonstrate urgency and security coverage. That is not what I ask. Tahimik siya. Why did they not receive the base recovery case? Because it was less certain. Isabel noticed Gabriel's face before anyone else did. Hindi siya nagulat sa tanong. Ibig sabihin, alam niya na hindi lahat ng scenarios ay ipinakita. Gabriel, sabi ni Arturo, "Did you know? The lender presentation excluded the recovery case?" Mahabang katahimikan. Yes? Bumaba ang tingin ni Ramon. Si Serena naman ay hindi gumalaw. Why? Tanong ni Arturo. Because if we presented a scenario showing we could survive without immediate external capital, the lender would lose urgency and weaken the offer. So you deliberately negotiated from your own worst position, tanong ng director. To secure certainty. at the cost of a strategic asset. As collateral, not sale. Stop hiding behind vocabulary. Sabi ni Arturo. Hindi malakas ang boses. Pero naramdaman ng lahat ang galit. If you fail the facility, the lender has rights over kalamba. That is the point of collateral. Gabriel leaned forward. And if we walk into a covenant breach with no solution, the board panics. The banks tighten. Suppliers hear about it. And suddenly everyone starts pricing us as distressed. So your plan was to arrive with a signed term sheet before we could say no? Walang sagot. Hindi na kailangan. Sa break, lumabas si Isabel sa corridor para kumuha ng tubig. Sumunod si Gabriel makalipas ang ilang minuto. You didn't have to stay, sabi niya. Your uncle asked for an outside governance view. You wanted to hear everything. Yes. Tumingin siya sa kanya ng diretso. After last night, I wanted to know what was worth skipping your board and taking Serena out of the country. Sumikip ang mukha niya. You make it sound like we were fleeing permanently. Were you? No. Then why 4 suitcases? Napatingin siya sa sahig. We didn't know how long the negotiations would take. And Kuala Lumpur, secondary investor introduction. Did the board know? No. Tumango si Isabel. Then you were not leaving forever. You were just planning to stay away until you had enough leverage to come back. That's not fair. Isn't it? Huminga siya. You wanted to return with a deal already too far along for them to reject. Hindi makasagot si Gabriel. And Serena tanong niya, was she part of the financing plan before she became part of our marriage? Yes. And after yes? Did you ever wonder if you trusted her recommendations because you trusted her professionally? Or because she made you feel like the only brave person in the room? Napatigil siya. Tumama iyon. Gabriel leaned against the wall. My father spent 20 years telling me I wasn't built for this company. Hindi inaasahan ni Isabel ang sagot. Every mistake, every weak quarter, every deal, I didn't close fast enough. He compared me to himself. When he died, everyone pretended the succession was settled. It wasn't. Half the board waited to see if I would prove him right. Bumaba ang boses niya. Cavite was my call. I pushed it. I said we could scale faster. When the delays hit, I thought we could absorb them. Then the receivables slipped. Suddenly every number looked like evidence that I was exactly what he said. Isabel listened without softening the facts. So you hid it. I delayed the worst case briefing while I looked for a solution. You hid it. Napapikit siya. Yes. And Serena? She didn't look at me like I was failing. Neither did I. You looked at me like I was becoming someone you didn't recognize. Tahimik si Isabel. Maybe because you were... Bumalik sila sa boardroom para sa second session. Dito mas malinaw ang 3 possible paths. Option 1, Project Harbor. Mabilis ngunit mahal at may strategic collateral. Option 2, Internal Restructuring Freeze. Cavite Phase 2. Negotiate lender extensions. Sell non-core properties. Reduce discretionary capex at aggressively collect overdue receivables. Option 3, seek a minority strategic investor without pledging. Kalamba. Mas mabagal ngunit mas mababa ang structural risk. We need to know how real the receivable recovery is. Sabi ni Arturo. Inilabas ni Ramon ang updated collections report. Isa sa 2 malaking clients ay nag-confirm ng payment schedule within 35 to 45 days. Subject to final reconciliation. Ang isa naman ay partial settlement lamang. Hindi guaranteed ang recovery. Pero hindi rin fictional. Was this included in the lender deck? Tanong ng director. No. Sagot ni Serena. Why? Because the confirmation came after the first draft. The first draft? Yes. But the deck you planned to carry to Singapore was updated yesterday. Tahimik siya. Doon unang nagbago ang tensyon. Hindi na lamang Gabriel ang nasa ilalim ng review? Serena, did you know the 35 to 45-day recovery indication existed? Tanong ni Ramon. Yes. Why wasn't it added? Because it was non-binding. Then label it non-binding and show it. Wala siyang sagot. Pagkatapos ng meeting, hiniling ni Isabel kay Serena na mag-usap ng 5 minuto sa vacant conference room. Walang sigawan. Walang sampalan. I'm not here to ask why you slept with my husband. Bungad niya. Nagulat si Serena. I already know why you wanted him. What I want to know is why you were so desperate to get that financing signed. Tumigas ang babae. Because I know what happens when credit disappears. Pagkatapos ng mahabang katahimikan, ikinuwento nito ang tungkol sa ama niyang nawalan ng manufacturing business noong teenager pa siya. Isang bangko ang hindi nag-renew ng line. 2 suppliers ang nag-demand ng cash. At sa loob ng ilang buwan nawala ang kumpanya. Everyone said my father should have acted sooner. That if he had secured money before people smelled weakness, he could have survived. Tumingin siya kay Isabel. So when I saw Villanueva approaching a liquidity wall, I refused to wait. Even if the deal endangered Calamba, I believe no deal was more dangerous. And the recovery case. Natahimik si Serena. I thought if the board saw time, they would delay. So you helped manufacture urgency. I emphasized the risk. You remove information that complicated your preferred answer. Napahigpit ang panga ni Serena. I was trying to save the company. So was Gabriel. Huminga si Isabel. That sentence doesn't make either of you right. Nang gabing iyon, bumalik si Isabel sa bahay nila ni Gabriel para kumuha ng natitirang personal files. Hindi na ito katulad ng dati. Walang confrontation sa airport. Walang board documents sa pagitan nila. Tanging 2 tao sa living room na parehong alam nang hindi na pwedeng ibalik sa kahapon ang kanilang relasyon. Are you leaving? Tanong ni Gabriel. Yes. For how long? I don't know. Umupo siya sa sofa ngunit hindi lumapit. I told the board I'll cooperate with the full review. Good. Serena will likely be removed from restructuring work. That's a governance decision. I'm ending the relationship. Isabel looked at him. That's a marriage fact. Not a repair. Napayuko siya. I know. Do you? Inilapag niya ang folder sa bag. Because I need you to understand something. You didn't cheat because Serena had some magical hold over you. You chose a person who reflected back the version of yourself you wanted to believe. Strong, decisive. Always one deal away from proving everyone wrong? Tahimik si Gabriel. And I made it easy to become distant. Pagpapatuloy niya. I watched. I suspected. I tested. I even put on a uniform instead of asking you directly. That was my failure. Tumingin siya sa asawa. But my failure did not make your affair inevitable. No. Sabi niya, it didn't. Walang depensa. Sa wakas. I'm sorry. I know. That's all. What do you want me to do? Gabriel, cry harder. So, you know the apology landed. Nanlumo ang mukha niya. Lumambot ng bahagya ang boses ni Isabel. I'm not trying to punish you. I just don't know who we are after this. Can counseling help? Maybe later. Why not now? Because right now you're still in crisis mode. You want to save the company. Save the marriage. Save the board seat. Save your image. I don't want to become another problem you solved before midnight. Napapikit siya. That's not what you are. Then prove it by letting me leave without turning this into another emergency. Kinuha ni Isabel ang suitcase niya at lumakad patungo sa pinto. Bago siya lumabas, tumunog ang phone ni Gabriel. Message mula kay Arturo. Emergency Finance Committee update. Binasa niya iyon at tumigas ang mukha. What tanong ni Isabel? Hindi niya balak manatili. Pero may kakaiba sa ekspresyon nito. Iniabot niya ang phone. Nakasaad sa preliminary review na ang Singapore lender presentation had been prepared using the downside liquidity scenario as primary basis. Habang ang updated receivable recovery indication ay hindi isinama sa final deck, may additional note. Strategy Office instructed lender-facing materials to maintain urgency pending exclusivity discussion. Serena tanong ni Isabel. I don't know if she did it alone. At ikaw? Gabriel looked at the message for a long time. I knew the deck was aggressive. Did you know the recovery indication was missing? Mahabang katahimikan. Yes. Hindi na kailangan ni Isabel ng ibang sagot. Tumango siya ng mabagal. Then tomorrow, don't tell you're bored. Serena pushed you. I won't. Tell them you saw the incomplete picture and chose it because it gave you the answer you wanted. Gabriel closed his eyes. Isabel opened the door. Sa pagkakataong iyon, hindi siya umaalis dahil may ibang babae. Umaalis siya dahil sa wakas. Malinaw na ang pinakamalaking kasinungalingan ni Gabriel ay hindi kung sino ang katabi niya sa isang eroplano, kundi ang paniniwalang maaari niyang piliin kung aling bahagi ng katotohanan ang sapat para sa lahat ng taong nagtitiwala sa kanya. Walang VIP sa katotohanan. 3 araw matapos umalis si Isabel sa bahay nila, nagsimula ang independent review ng Project Harbor. Hindi na pinayagan ng board na ang strategy office ni Serena o ang executive team ni Gabriel lamang ang maghanda ng analysis. Kumuha sila ng external restructuring advisor, isang independent treasury specialist at 2 miyembro ng audit committee upang muling buuin ang buong liquidity picture mula sa raw numbers. Sa unang meeting, 3 projection ang inilagay sa malaking screen. Downside, base at recovery. Parehong mga numero ang pinanggalingan. Ngunit, ibang assumptions ang ginagamit sa timing ng receivables. Lender extensions at Kabit expansion costs. Sa downside case, mabilis talagang lumiliit ang liquidity at nagiging attractive ang Project Harbor dahil nagbibigay ito ng immediate cash. Sa base case, mahirap ang susunod na 2 quarter ngunit manageable kung ihihinto ang Cavite Phase 2 at ma-renegotiate ang short-term facilities. Sa recovery case, kung dumating ang malaking receivable sa loob ng 40 araw at pumayag ang 2 lenders sa maturity extension, hindi kailangan ng emergency facility na may kalamba collateral. So the company was under pressure, sabi ng independent advisor. But the presentation to the Singapore lender framed pressure as though collapse were imminent. Tahimik si Gabriel. And that framing increased the lender's leverage. Dagdag ng treasury specialist. Once they believed you had no time, you became willing to pay for certainty with one of your strongest assets. Si Serena ay nakaupo sa kabilang side ng boardroom. Wala na ang dating confidence na ginagamit niya sa investor meetings. Hindi siya sinuspende sa buong kumpanya. Ngunit inalis siya sa restructuring team habang sinusuri ang papel niya sa lender deck. I did not fabricate numbers. Sabi niya. No one is accusing you of fabricating numbers. Sagot ng audit chair. The issue is selective presentation. Every financing presentation selects assumptions. Correct? But good governance requires material alternatives to be visible internally, especially when management is asking the company to pledge strategic collateral. Iniharap sa kanya ang email chain. Isang message mula sa strategy office ang nagsabi, Keep the lender discussion anchored to downside until exclusivity is secured. Recovery timing remains too uncertain and may weaken urgency. Nasa ilalim ang initials ni Serena. Hindi niya itinanggi iyon. I believed if the lender saw we had other options, they would either increase pricing or walk away. And did Gabriel know? Tanong ng audit chair. Mahabang katahimikan. He knew we were maintaining an urgency position. Lahat ay napalingon sa CEO. Gabriel did not look at Serena. Yes. Sabi niya. I knew. Did you instruct her to remove the receivable recovery indication? No. Did you see the final deck without it? Yes. And you allowed it to proceed? Yes. Walang sumigaw sa kanya. Iyon ang mas mabigat. Ang minute secretary ay tahimik na nagtatype habang si Gabriel mismo ang naglalagay sa permanent corporate record ng mga bagay na ilang linggo niyang tinatakasan. Why? Tanong ni Arturo. Hindi natiyuhin ang tono. Vice Chair iyon. Gabriel looked at the 3 projections on the screen. Because I wanted one answer. Walang gumalaw. The base case required lender negotiations. Asset sales. Project freezes. Collections, work, and months of uncertainty. The recovery case depended on money we did not yet have. Harbor gave me one transaction I could point to and say the problem was solved. Even if it wasn't actually solved, sabi ni independent director. Even then, huminga si Gabriel. I kept telling myself that once liquidity was secured, we could repair the rest. But yes, I preferred the model that justified the deal I already wanted. Napatingin si Serena sa kanya. Marahil inaasahan niyang ipapasa nito ang blame sa strategy office. Hindi niya ginawa. Serena pushed urgency. I allowed it because it matched my fear. Isang simpleng pangungusap iyon. Ngunit iyon ang unang pagkakataon na hindi niya ginamit ang salitang CEO, market, father o board pressure bilang depensa. Sa Aurelia Charter Aviation, ibang review naman ang ginagawa ni Isabel. Hindi niya pinayagang manatiling Villanueva incident lamang ang nangyari sa Clark. Kung may kahinaan sa system na nakita dahil asawa niya ang passenger, kailangan itong ayusin para sa lahat. Kasama ang operations head na si Mia, Chief Compliance Officer at Dispatch Director. Nireview nila kung paano na idagdag si Serena sa manifest nang walang immediate revalidation. Technically, gumana ang system dahil nahuli ang mismatch bago dispatch release. Ngunit masyadong malapit sa departure ang escalation. If the executive assistant had used an approver credential by mistake, pwede sanang magmukhang valid ang amendment, sabi ng compliance officer. Then we remove ambiguous delegated authority. Sagot ni Isabel. Any executive manifest change, after corporate travel authorization, needs a fresh human confirmation from the designated approver. No inherited approval. No implied approval because the passenger is CEO. Tumingin ang dispatch director sa kanya. Even for owners, especially for owners. Some clients will complain. Then, sales can explain why the rule exists. Bahagyang ngumiti si Mia. Walang VIP. Isabel shook her head. May VIP service. Walang VIP sa compliance. Sa parehong review, kusa ring inilagay ni Isabel sa record ang ginawa niyang undercover appearance. Hindi kailangan iyon para sa operational findings. Ngunit pinilit niya. The audit was scheduled, sabi niya. But I personally joined after seeing Serena Castillo added to the manifest. I had a legitimate governance concern. But I also had a personal motive. Tumingin ang compliance officer sa kanya. Ma'am, the hold was still valid. I know. I'm not questioning the hold. I'm documenting my conflict. Do you want it treated as a breach? Treat it as you would if any executive inserted herself into an audit involving a spouse. Sa huli, hindi ito naging disciplinary breach dahil hindi niya in-override ang compliance decision at agad siyang nag-recuse sa final disposition. Ngunit nagrekomenda ang governance committee na future executive-related incidents ay automatikong mapunta sa independent compliance officer bago pa man makialam ang senior leadership. Tinanggap iyon ni Isabel. Hindi siya bumalik sa Aurelia para patunayan na mas makapangyarihan siya kaysa kay Gabriel. Bumalik siya dahil nakita niyang kahit ang sarili niyang magandang intensyon ay nangangailangan ng boundaries. Sa loob ng maraming taon, sinabi niyang system mattered more than personalities. Ngayon, kailangan niyang patunayan na kasama siya sa rule na iyon. Samantala, mas lumalim ang finance review. Ang malaking receivable na tinukoy sa recovery case ay hindi sigurado. Ngunit mas malakas kaysa inilalarawan ng Project Harbor Deck. May written reconciliation schedule ang client at partial payment na nakahanda sa escrow pending completion ng documentation. Kasabay noon, natuklasan ng Treasury Team na may 2 non-core properties ang Villanueva Holdings sa Laguna at Bulacan na maaaring ibenta ng hindi naaapektuhan ang core operations. May unused revolving credit line din na maliit para solusyonan ang buong problema ngunit sapat para magbigay ng breathing room kung papayag ang lenders sa amended covenant. So there was never one magic solution. Sabi ni Arturo. No. Sagot ng advisor. There was a collection of unpleasant solutions. Napapikit si Gabriel. Iyon mismo ang ayaw niyang harapin. Project Harbor had been attractive not because it was clearly best, but because it made complexity disappear on one page. What does restructuring require? Tanong niya. Freeze Phase 2 in Cavite. Sell non-core properties. Negotiate extensions with 3 banks. Reduce discretionary capital expenditure. Suspend executive bonuses. Delay dividend increase. Pursue the receivable aggressively. And begin a minority investor process as backup. Hindi glamorous. Hindi iyon deal na pwedeng iuwi mula Singapore bilang heroic rescue. Pero mas mababa ang risk kaysa isugal ang kalambahab. Ang pinakamahirap na session ay ang pagharap ni na Gabriel at Serena nang walang ibang executive maliban sa legal counsel at audit chair. Hindi iyon tungkol sa affair. Malinaw ang mandate. Did Miss Castillo ever tell you that the downside case was the only viable scenario? Tanong ng counsel. She told me it was the only scenario we could finance quickly. Did you challenge that? Not enough. Serena looked at him. You asked me for something executable. I did. You said you could not walk into the board with another list of problems. I did. Then don't sit there like I created the urgency alone. Gabrielle finally met her eyes. I'm not. Napahinto siya. I'm saying I rewarded you every time you made the situation simpler than it was. You gave me the answer I wanted. And I gave you more influence because of it. That's convenient now. No? Convenient would be blaming you. Tahimik siya. I was CEO. I saw the deck. I knew what was missing. The decision was mine. Serena's expression shifted. For months, she had been both confidant and strategist. The person who told Gabriel he could still outrun the crisis. Now he was refusing to let her carry the entire failure. Strangely, that seemed to hurt more than anger. Do you regret the relationship? Tanong niya suddenly. Napatingin ang legal counsel. Ngunit hindi sumingit dahil ang tanong ay galing kay Serena. Gabriel took several seconds. Yes? Naging matigas ang mukha niya. Because you got caught. Because I used you as a place where I didn't have to feel like I was failing. So, I was what therapy? No. Huminga siya. You were someone I cared about. And I still chose you for reasons that were unfair to both of you. Both you and Isabel. Napatawa si Serena ng mapait. Don't compare us now. I'm not. Isabel was my wife. I betrayed her. You were my executive and I blurred the line between personal trust and professional judgment. That damaged you too. Natahimik si Serena. Hindi nito binura ang sarili niyang choices. Ngunit sa unang pagkakataon, pareho nilang nakita na ang affair ay hindi lamang moral betrayal. Ginulo rin nito ang architecture ng decision-making sa kumpanya. I'm living strategy. Sabi niya pagkatapos ng mahabang katahimikan. You don't have to decide that today. I already did. Serena, I need to know if I can make decisions somewhere without needing you to believe I'm the smartest person in the room. Kinahapunan. Naglabas ang board ng restructuring resolution. Project Harbor would not proceed in its current form. Walang kalamba logistics hub sa emergency collateral package. Instead, Villanueva Holdings would launch a 90-day restructuring program supervised by a committee chaired by Arturo and an independent director. Gabriel would remain CEO because the board did not believe a leadership vacuum during liquidity stress would help the company. Ngunit pansamantala siyang mawawalan ng unilateral authority sa major financing, asset disposals at related party transactions. Any transaction above the threshold required restructuring committee approval. Executive bonuses, kabilang ang kanya, were suspended. Cavite Phase 2 was frozen. Non-core land sales would begin. Banks would receive full 3-scenario projections rather than the selected downside case. Serena was removed from restructuring leadership and would transition out of the strategy director role after handing over active projects. Walang pulis. Walang dramatic corporate exile. Walang isang kontrabida na pinalayas para kunwari malinis na ang lahat. Ang consequence ay mas tahimik at mas mahirap kailangan nilang manatili sa harap ng mga taong alam na ngayon ang eksaktong paraan kung paano nila pinili ang maling sagot. Nang gabing iyon, tumawag si Gabriel kay Isabel. Hindi niya agad sinagot. Nasa Aurelia office siya sa Pasay. Tinitingnan ang bagong charter authorization workflow sa screen. Sa ikatlong ring, pinindot niya ang answer button. Hello? The board rejected Harbor. I heard how your uncle called to clarify the Aurelia account controls for future travel. Napatawa siya ng mahina. Walang saya. Of course. What did they decide I stay CEO? Restructuring Committee controls major financing. Cavite Phase 2 frozen. Assets for sale. Full scenarios to banks. No kalamba collateral. That sounds painful. It is. Probably useful. Then, tahimik siya. Serena is leaving strategy. Hindi sumagot si Isabel. I'm not telling you because I expect that to fix anything. Good. I told the board the deck was my responsibility. Good. You keep saying good. What do you want? Gabriel, I don't know. Maybe I want one thing to feel less broken. Lumambot ng bahagya ang mukha ni Isabel kahit hindi niya ito nakikita. Then stop trying to fix everything at once. Can I see you? Tanong niya. Not tonight. Tomorrow. Not for marriage. Then for what? You asked me once why I stayed at your board meeting. I think I know now. Tahimik siya. I spent years keeping Aurelia running without really being present. I told myself I had stepped back because the team was strong. Partly true. But I also like not having to be responsible for every hard conversation anymore. Tumingin siya sa operations floor sa labas ng glass wall. Clark reminded me that I still care about this work. So I'm coming back as active executive chair for a while. That's good. Yes? Is that because of me? No. And that's why it's good. Gabriel absorbed the answer quietly. I understand. I'm learning not to say yes too fast. Sa kabila ng lahat, halos ngumiti si Isabel. That might be progress. Bago ibaba ang tawag, Sinabi ni Gabriel. I'm sorry you had to see me at that counter. I'm not. Nagulat siya. Why? Because if I hadn't, I might still be sitting at home wondering whether I imagined everything. And you might be in Singapore right now holding a term sheet that made tomorrow worse. So you think stopping the flight saved me? No. Umiling si Isabel kahit hindi niya nakikita. The system stopped the flight. What you do with the fact that it stopped you is up to you. Tahimik sila ng ilang segundo. Good night. Gabriel. Good night. Pagkababa ng tawag. Bumalik si Isabel sa conference table kung saan naghihintay ang final Aurelia policy draft. Sa unang page ay may bagong rule. Any material passenger or itinerary amendment on a corporate executive charter requires explicit reauthorization by an independent designated corporate approver before dispatch release. Executive status does not substitute for authorization. Binasa niya iyon ng isang beses. Saka pumirma bilang executive chair. Hindi iyon policy na ginawa para kay Gabriel. Hindi rin iyon parusa sa anumang susunod na CEO na mayabang. Iyon ang leso na gustong panatilihin ng kumpanya matapos lumipas ang skandal. Sa Makati, si Gabriel naman ay nakaupo mag-isa sa dati niyang opisina habang unti-unting nawawala ang mga ilaw sa ibang floors. Sa harap niya ay 3 projection na dapat sana niyang nakita bilang 3 posibilidad. Sa halip, pinili niya noon ang pinaka-nakakatakot dahil iyon ang projection na nagbigay sa kanya ng pinakamatapang na solusyon. Ngayon, wala na ang secret flight, wala na ang Singapore deal, wala na si Serena sa tabi niya. At wala rin si Isabel sa bahay na pwede niyang uwian para sabihing maayos ang lahat. Ngunit sa unang pagkakataon sa loob ng maraming buwan, kumpleto ang mga numero sa harap niya. Walang itinagong recovery case. Walang piniling version ng katotohanan. Walang VIP. At marahil iyon ang unang tunay na pagkakataon niyang makapagsimulang ayusin ang kumpanyang muntik niyang isugal para lamang hindi aminin na natatakot siya. Ang pag-alis na hindi pagtakas. 6 na buwan matapos hindi makaalis ang business jet sa Clark. Ibang-iba na ang Villanueva Pacific Holdings sa kumpanyang muntik magdala ng Calamba Logistics Hub bilang collateral para sa Project Harbor. Hindi naging dramatic ang recovery. Walang isang investor na dumating upang iligtas sila. Walang stock market miracle. At walang press conference na nagdeklara na nalutas na ang lahat. Sa halip, unti-unting gumana ang mga solusyong dati, ayaw tingnan ni Gabriel dahil masyado silang mabagal at masyadong maraming kailangang aminin. Dumating ang pinakamalaking overdue receivable makalipas ang 42 araw. Halos eksakto sa recovery range na tinanggal noon sa Singapore lender deck. Ang 2 non-core properties sa Laguna at Bulacan ay naibenta sa makatwirang presyo. Pumayag ang 3 bangko sa maturity extensions kapalit ng mas mahigpit na reporting at temporary restrictions sa dividends. Nanatiling frozen ang second phase ng Cavite expansion habang inaayos ang existing facility. At matapos ang 2 buwan ng negotiations, nakapasok lang isang minority strategic investor na walang control rights sa Calamba at walang karapatang diktahan ng board. Hindi naging mabilis ang proseso. Pero nang ipakita ng CFO ang bagong liquidity forecast sa quarterly review. Unang beses sa halos 1 taon na walang red warning sa susunod na 2 quarters. Nanatiling CEO si Gabriel. Ngunit hindi na katulad noon ang posisyon niya. Ang restructuring committee ay hindi agad binuwag ng gumanda ang cash position. Pinili ng board na panatilihin ang oversight sa major financing at asset transactions sa loob ng 1 pang taon. Dati, iisipin ni Gabriel na insulto iyon. Ngayon, sa isang meeting kung saan tinanong siya ng junior finance manager kung bakit kailangang i-delay ang isang hotel acquisition na gusto niya. Hindi niya sinabi na dahil CEO siya at sapat na iyon, show me the downside and the recovery case. Sabi niya, Nagkatinginan ang ilang executives dahil eksaktong kabaligtaran iyon ng ugali niya noong Project Harbor. Nang matapos ang presentation, hindi siya ang unang nagsalita. Hinintay niya ang Treasury Head, Risk Officer at Independent Committee Member. Sa huli, pinili nilang wag ituloy ang acquisition. Hindi natuwa si Gabriel. Pero pumirma siya sa decision memo nang walang pagtatangkang i-reopen ang usapan sa likod ng committee. Hindi siya naging mapagkumbaba sa isang gabi. Minsan, mabilis pa rin siyang mainis kapag mabagal ang approvals. Minsan, kailangan niyang pigilan ang sarili na tawagan direktang chairman kapag ayaw niya ang isang sagot. Ngunit natutunan niyang ang pagiging constrained ay hindi katumbas ng pagiging mahina. Minsan, ang limitasyon ang pumipigil sa leader na gawing personal na takot ang problema ng buong kumpanya. Si Serena Castillo naman ay umalis sa Villanueva Holdings 3 buwan matapos ang review. Hindi siya tinanggal dahil sa fraud dahil walang fraud na napatunayan. Ang numbers niya ay tunay. Ang problema ay kung paano niya pinili kung alin ang ipapakita at kung paano niya hinayaang ang personal na relasyon nila ni Gabriel ay maging bahagi ng professional judgment. Tinapos niya ang transition ng maayos. Ibinigay ang files sa bagong strategy head at tinanggap ang mas maliit na role sa isang regional logistics advisory firm sa Cebu. Bago umalis, nagkita sila ni Gabriel sa isang conference room kung saan dati sila gumagawa ng late-night financing models. Wala nang intimacy sa pagitan nila. Do you think we would have happened if Harbor never existed? Tanong ni Serena. Matagal bago sumagot si Gabriel. Maybe. That's what makes it worse. Napangiti siya ng mapait. At least honest. I should have ended it before Clark. You should have never started it. Yes. Wala silang dahilan para magkunwaring maganda ang pagtatapos. Ngunit hindi rin siya pinagbintangan ni Gabriel sa board bilang taong sumira sa kanya. Alam niyang madaling gawing simpleng kwento ang lahat. Manipulative mistress convinces frightened CEO to make reckless deal. Mas mahirap ang tunay na kwento. Serena exploited urgency. Gabriel wanted urgency because it excused the decision he already preferred. Pareho silang may bahagi. At pareho silang kailangang umalis mula sa relasyon nang walang taong ginagawang alay para gumanda ang imahe ng isa. Sa Aurelia, Charter, Aviation. Mas malaki rin ang pagbabago. Bumalik si Isabel bilang active executive chair at hindi na lamang pumipirma sa quarterly governance reports. 2 araw bawat linggo ay nasa operations office siya. 1 araw sa Clark o ibang managed terminal. At ang natitirang oras ay nakatuon sa audit, client governance at fleet expansion. Ang manifest revalidation policy na ginawa pagkatapos ng Villanueva incident ay naging standard sa lahat ng corporate executive accounts. Kapag may material passenger change pagkatapos ma-authorize ang flight, kailangan ng explicit confirmation mula sa independent designated approver. Kapag may onward itinerary na nagbabago sa corporate purpose, kailangang ma-revalidate iyon bago dispatch release. At wala ng system field na maaaring magmukhang approval ng isang corporate office kung wala talagang taong nag-confirm. Nagreklamo ang ilang high-value clients. Isang chairman ang minsang nagsabing hindi siya sanay na hinihintay ang kanyang CFO bago makaalis ang sarili niyang kumpanya. Sumagot si Isabel ng mahinahon. Sir, kung gusto ninyo ng personal charter, we can structure a personal account. Kung corporate ang gumagamit at corporate ang nagbabayad, corporate rules apply. Nanatili pa rin ang client. At matapos ang ilang buwan, napansin ni Isabel na mas madalang na ang executive exceptions dahil ang mga company assistants mismo ay natutong maghanda ng tama bago dumating ang pasahero. Hindi niya itinago sa team ang sarili niyang pagkakamali sa Clark. Sa isang management workshop, ikinuwento niya kung paano niya ginamit ang scheduled audit upang personal na makita kung sino ang kasama ng asawa niya. The operational hold was correct, sabi niya sa managers. Pero ang personal konflikto was real. Hindi natin dapat gawing hero story ang isang process failure just because the outcome was useful. Tinanong siya ng isang batang compliance officer kung pinagsisisihan ba niyang pumunta siya sa counter. Matagal bago sumagot si Isabel. I regret that I thought disguise was safer than conversation. But I don't regret learning that the system worked even against someone close to me. Doon niya naunawaan kung gaano kalaki ang nabago sa kanya. Dati, proud siya sa Aurelia, pero laging nasa likod. Iniisip niyang sapat ng maganda ang system kahit hindi na siya present. Ngayon, bumalik siya hindi upang kontrolin ang bawat flight, kundi upang siguraduhin na ang mga taong nagpapatakbo ng system ay may malinaw na support kapag kailangan nilang magsabi ng hindi sa isang taong powerful. Sa personal na buhay, nanatiling hiwalay sina Isabel at Gabriel. Nakatira si Isabel sa kondo niya sa BGC at hindi niya ibinalik ang gamit sa bahay kahit matapos humupa ang corporate crisis. Nag-counseling sila, pero hindi linggo-linggo sa simula. Minsan 2 linggo ang pagitan. Minsan 1 buwan dahil ayaw ni Isabel na maging isa pang restructuring program ang marriage nila na may timeline. Deliverables at target closing date. Sa sesyon, mas mahirap pag-usapan ng mga simpleng bagay kaysa affair. Paano nagsimulang hindi magtanong si Gabriel tungkol sa trabaho niya? Kailan naging normal na umuwi silang pareho ngunit mas mahaba pa ang usapan nila sa assistants kaysa sa isa't isa? Bakit pinili ni Isabel na mag-observe sa halip na magsalita kapag naramdaman niyang may mali? At bakit? Kailangang laging may solution si Gabriel bago niya amining natatakot siya? Walang sagot na nagtanggal sa cheating. Wala ring sagot na nagbigay kay Isabel ng obligasyong patawarin siya. Pero unti-unti nilang naintindihan na kung magkakaroon man ng pangalawang bersyon ang marriage nila, hindi iyon maaaring kopya ng una na inayos lamang ang isang skandal. Isang Biyernes ng hapon, bumalik si Isabel sa Clark Private Terminal para sa quarterly operations review. Hindi na siya naka-audit uniform. Naka-cream blazer, dark trousers, at maliit na Aurelia Executive Chair badge siya habang naglalakad kasama si Mia sa passenger service floor. Manifest exception rate down 28%, sabi ni Mia habang ipinapakita ang report sa tablet. And corporate revalidation delays are shorter because client offices are finally training backup approvers. Complaints, still plenty. Good. Tumawa si Mia. You say that every quarter. Complaints mean they know the rule exists. Habang papunta sila sa dispatch desk, may isang passenger profile na lumitaw sa kabilang check-in monitor. Gabriel Villanueva. Hindi niya alam na aalis ito sa araw na iyon. Naramdaman niya ang lumang reflex na gustong tingnan agad ang manifest. Pero hindi niya ginawa. Wala siyang operational role sa booking. Ma'am, tanong ni Mia. Napansin ang pangalan. Normal process. Sabi ni Isabel. No special handling. Makalipas ang 10 minuto, nagtagpo sila malapit sa boarding lounge. Nagulat din si Gabriel nang makita siya. Naka-dark gray suit ito at may isang carry-on lamang. Walang 2 malaking suitcase. Walang lock case. Walang sirena. You're here. Sabi niya. Quarterly review. I thought you stopped doing undercover audits. I learned my lesson. Napangiti siya ng mahina. Good. Tumingin si Isabel sa carry-on. 1 bag. 3-day trip. Progress. Tokyo? Regional partner meeting. Board approved, committee approved. Corporate secretary revalidated after itinerary change. Finance knows the expense code. And I even classified the documents. Napataas ang kilay niya. You rehearsed that? Absolutely. Hindi niya napigilang ngumiti. Maliit lamang. Hindi forgiveness. Pero totoo. Lumapit ang passenger service agent at iniabot kay Gabriel ang boarding documents. Sir, your flight is cleared. Crew is ready. Kinuha niya iyon. Pagkatapos ay tumingin kay Isabel. Can I ask the executive chair to verify? Umiling siya. Don't abuse connections. Worth trying. Ngunit ibinigay pa rin niya ang boarding pass kay Isabel. Hindi dahil kailangan ng operational approval, kundi parang isang maliit na joke sa pagitan nila. Tiningnan niya ang pangalan. Flight number at departure time. Lahat normal. Ibinalik niya iyon sa kanya. Approved ang flight mo. Saglit na lumiwanag ang mukha ni Gabriel. Ngunit idinagdag niya. Hindi ibig sabihin approve na rin tayo. Napatawa siya ng mahina at tumango. I know. Walang pagtatangkang gawing romantic ang linya. Walang paghawak sa kamay niya. Actually, I think 6 months ago I would have tried to negotiate that sentence. And now I understand some approvals aren't mine to accelerate. Naglakad sila patungo sa malaking glass window kung saan kita ang aircraft sa apron. Hindi iyon parehong jet noong gabing hindi sila nakaalis. Ngunit kapareho ang tunog ng ground equipment at malamig na liwanag sa labas. I need to tell you something before I go. Sabi ni Gabriel. What? The last 6 months were the first time I understood that staying and facing a bad meeting can be harder than flying somewhere with a possible solution. Tumingin siya sa runway. That night, I kept saying I wasn't running. Technically, I was right. I planned to come back. That doesn't mean you weren't running. I know. Huminga siya. I was running from being seen before I had an answer. By the board? By you. By myself. Tahimik si Isabel. And now I'm going to Tokyo for a meeting everyone knows about. If it goes badly, I come home and say it went badly. Revolutionary. Tumawa siya. Apparently, tumunog ang boarding call mula sa private lounge. Hindi pa rin umalis si Gabriel agad. When I get back, huminto siya. Dati, sigurado siyang tatapusin nito ang pangungusap bilang demand. Dinner. Counseling. Come home. Ngayon, nagtanong siya. Would you have dinner with me? Hindi agad sumagot si Isabel. As what? 2 people having dinner. No presentation, no. No marriage proposal to your own wife. Definitely not. No 5-point recovery plan. I deleted the slides. Napatawa siya ng totoo sa pagkakataong iyon. Pagkatapos ay naging seryoso ulit. I'm not promising anything. I know. I still don't know if I can live with what happened. I know. And if we ever try again, it won't be because you fixed the company. I know. Tumango siya. Sa unang pagkakataon, ang paulit-ulit na I know ay hindi tunog ng lalaking gustong matapos ang usapan. Tunog iyon ng taong natutong hindi bawat sagot kailangan sundan ng argumento. Lumakad si Gabriel ng ilang hakbang patungo sa boarding corridor. Huminto siya nang marinig ang boses ni Isabel. Gabriel. Lumingon siya. Saglit siyang nag-atubili bago magsalita. Pwede kang tumawag pagbalik mo. Hindi ito malaking pangako. Hindi rin malinaw na reconciliation. Ngunit sapat para makita niyang bumaba ng kaunti ang tensyon sa mukha niya. I will. After you land. After I land. Not from the aircraft. Yes? Ma'am? Napailing siya. Go? Pinanood ni Isabel habang naglalakad siya patungo sa aircraft. Hindi niya tiningnan ang system para siguraduhing aalis ang flight. Hindi niya tinanong si dispatch kung final na ang clearance. Wala siyang dahilan. Ilang minuto ang lumipas bago gumalaw ang jet mula sa stand. Nagtaxi patungo sa runway at tuluyang nawala sa dulo ng glass view. 6 na buwan na ang nakalipas. Ang hindi pag-alis ng isang eroplano ang nagbukas sa lahat ng bagay na pilit nilang tinatago isang affair. Isang financing crisis? Isang CEO na takot magmukhang mahina. At isang asawa na mas piniling magtago sa likod ng uniform kaysa amining wala na siyang tiwala. Ngayon, ang pag-alis ng eroplano ay walang skandal. Walang secret passenger. Walang incomplete authorization. Walang term sheet na kailangang mapirmahan bago makita ng board. Isang ordinaryong business flight lamang. At marahil iyon ang pinakamalaking pagbabago. Hindi na kailangan ni Gabriel tumakas upang maramdaman na may kontrol siya. Hindi na kailangan ni Isabel magtago upang malaman ang katotohanan. At kung mayroon mang susunod na kabanata sa pagitan nila, hindi iyon magsisimula sa isang eroplano na pinilit manatili sa lupa. Magsisimula iyon kapag bumalik ang isang taong natutunan, nang umalis ng tama at tumawag tulad ng ipinangako niya.